So I'm sure many of you guys know what's been going on with the Wilbur allegations, but somehow the situation just got so much worse when one of Wilbur's alleged ex-girlfriends, a different one, has come out with some new allegations, and they are so much worse. So in case you weren't up to date with the Wilbur allegations, but pretty much what happened was this other YouTuber named Shelby came out with some allegations against this major Minecraft YouTuber named Wilbur. He has over 6 million subscribers, and the allegations were pretty much of abuse in the form of biting. So yeah, apparently Wilbur had this excessive biting problem with his partner, to the times where it looks like he even might have enjoyed hurting her, and that's the thing that she really came out and had a problem with, especially because this was continued behavior. But it looks like new allegations have come out from a different girlfriend that not only had a very similar situation with Wilbur, but actually it was a lot worse in my opinion. So this creator named Alice Nina came out on Twitter with some new allegations against Wilbur. It's only been like a day or so, and this tweet already has over 100,000 likes and millions of views. So at this point, if Wilbur doesn't respond to these allegations, she's just completely cooked. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but in our last video we talked about Wilbur. He actually did make a very bad response where he pretty much said, out of respect, that he wasn't going to show evidence that he was innocent, which was just absolutely insane to me. And the more and more this drags on and the more allegations that come out against Wilbur, the worse it gets for him, because he's not replying with evidence to prove his innocence, you know? This Alice girl posted, "These past few years have been difficult, but I finally feel safe enough to speak out against my experience with Wilbur." She said, "Hello, I'm Alice. I dated Wilbur back in 2019, and I want to speak out against my experience. I felt like I couldn't talk about this sooner because I was scared of his public influence and the potential backlash from fans. But now, after hearing Shelby's story, seeing the support she's been shown, and admiring her bravery, I finally felt safe enough to break my silence on our relationship. Back in 2019, at the beginning of the relationship, I was immediately shown a lot of affection, very reminiscent of love bombing. One of his close friends at the time warned me in confidence to be careful, as if they had seen people get hurt in the past, but I believed he was good inside. After a month of the honeymoon period was over, and it was like I was dating a completely different person. I was told to keep our relationship secret, but was framed in a way that implied that it was for my safety, as if it was in my best interest to keep this a secret despite my own feelings. I believe that he enjoyed having control over the relationship." So to give a little bit of context, in case you don't know what love bombing is, it's pretty much like going over the top with affection and then pretty much taking it away. You know, they call it like emotional abuse, and this is the second time Wilbur has been accused from this in both accusations. At first I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of normal, you know, they're super affectionate during the honeymoon phase. However, you know what, from a lot of research, you can pretty much tell that a lot of this honeymoon phase is usually within like 3 months or so. Honeymoon phase pretty much completely in the first month. It does sound like love bombing, and it does kind of sound like emotional abuse, and that's not a good sign. He goes on to say, "It never felt like he was encouraging towards me or any of my goals in the last few months. He made me feel extremely unlovable and unwanted. I had suffered from self-blank tendencies. In 2019, he ignored the marks on my body and only took interest in retelling his own life struggles. I also experienced the biting habit, which had already been elaborated on by Shelby." Now, to just go over this, can you imagine having your girlfriend talk about their past struggles and then immediately making about yourself? Oh, of course, allegedly. This is just absolutely terrible, and I cannot imagine what would be going through Wilbur's head to be like that. And honestly, it probably has to do with ego, you know, it's all about him, and of course that kind of happens when you get 6 million subscribers. You're very egotistical, but this is just really terrible behavior and not how you should be treating your partner. And then she also says she experienced the biting habit, which is just absolutely crazy to see this problem happening multiple times. And keep in mind, Wilbur at this time was like 25-ish, you know, late 20s, okay, mid to late 20s, when he's apparently having these biting problems, which is just like, it's actually psychotic behavior. You should not be having these kind of problems when you're like pushing 30, bro. That's all I'm saying. She goes on to say, "After a while, I noticed that it was always me putting the effort into the relationship, so I decided one day not be the one to message first, just to see what would happen, and he never spoke to me again, so the relationship dissolved." Bro, that's absolutely crazy to me. Like, don't get me wrong, I've done that in the past when it comes to, like, you know, mutuals or just random people you happen to talk to online, but I cannot imagine doing this to my girlfriend. Like, she's not gonna message me one day and then we're never going to speak again. That's just like pathetic behavior, if it's true, of course. But from the both allegations, it definitely seemed like Wilbur wasn't very great at socializing, so I guess I could understand why he would never text in the first place. But that's just like so crazy to me. Like, my girlfriend's not gonna message me one day and that's the end of the relationship. It's just, that is not the kind of person you want to be dating, that's for sure. So she goes on to say, skipping ahead to around 2021, we had spoken briefly over an Instagram DM about the relationship. In meeting up for closure on how things went in 2019, I gave him a second chance and met up hoping to get some answers. We walked through densely populated areas of town where we were stopped multiple times by his fans. In hindsight, this felt very intentional, almost as if it was to flaunt his influence and desirability to me. And I gotta say, on one hand, I was like, that's kind of ridiculous because, of course, if you have 6 million subscribers, regardless of where you go in public, you're going to get, you know, recognized and that kind of thing. I mean, I think a good example is when Mr. Beast is like, yeah, when I just go into any store now, you know, a bunch of people stop me for photos. And I understand that comparison, but yeah, if you guys go out with someone that's notable in the public, of course, people are going to stop for you. And so I thought that was a bit of a weird claim. However, on the other hand, this does kind of sound like something like Wilbur might do. Now, of course, that comes from a lot of these allegations. You know, I'm taking these as face value because Wilbur's response to them has been terrible, and he hasn't even responded to this new one. But this does sound like Wilbur would do something like this, you know, try to show his influence over her. I don't know, trying to manipulate her. But she goes on to say, we went to a bar to talk and he proceeded to get me very drunk. He got us an Uber back to his house. I ended up blacking out in his bed due to the alcohol, but the last thing I remember was him non-consensually removing my clothes. The next morning, he proceeded to tell me that I must be lesbian because I wasn't interested in him. Now, this is the worst, this is the blunt of the allegations. Now, the first allegations were really just the biting thing, which was gross and it was abusive. However, this is like actual assault, you know, SA, that kind of thing. And so that's really concerning if these allegations, you know, come out to be true. This is definitely a line that he definitely crossed. And this is, I mean, this is the kind of behavior that should get you landed in prison, if true, of course. I mean, these are the kind of things that if Alice is confident in this and there, you know, she thinks there's proof and evidence for it, she should 100% go to the police and get this man arrested, because you can't just be getting girls drunk, you know, unconsciously drunk, and then removing their clothes. That's just like, it's actually abusive, and he should go to prison for that if it's true. And also, he goes on to say, if Alice wasn't interested in him, he must be a lesbian. Like, that's just such an egotistical thing to say, especially because of the alleged past behavior. Of course, she wasn't going to be interested in you, bro. She stopped, you know, she didn't text you one time and that ended the relationship. Who would ever want to date someone like that? That's just so embarrassing for him. She said, these past years have been extremely difficult to navigate because of this. I couldn't go online without seeing him everywhere and being adored as this soft boy who heroically respects women and mental health issues. I couldn't even go to conventions and enjoy my own hobbies without seeing people dressed up as him. And I mean, I gotta say, all these people online, you know what, not every time, but very often, they'll act, you know, like these womanizers, you know, these male feminists, and then they turn out to be horrible people because, you know, honestly, they're just projecting their bad behavior. You know, they're trying to seem like an above average person when they're actually apparently worse than most people. And so anytime you see like a male feminist, I would definitely give it a red flag, because you know what, most men don't need to be feminists to just respect women. And so when you see these people going out of their way, definitely to me, it's like a bit of a red flag. But that, I mean, I guess that's just me. She said, Shelby was right. Staying quiet wasn't bringing me any shiny piece, it was only keeping his. And I gotta say, you know, if these allegations are true, which I think the only unfortunate part about this is another allegation against Wilbur with very little evidence. There's not a ton of evidence she was shown other than her own story. You know, take her for her word of mouth. And I gotta say, the more and more I hear about these Wilbur allegations, the more I'm starting to believe, you know, he might be guilty of this thing. And the reason for that is, of course, because he's been terrible at responding to these allegations. And so far, we have to take these at face value because he hasn't replied to him. It's going on like 11 days of radio silence from Wilbur, and he hasn't replied to this. And like I said in the beginning, that tweet from Alice had like over 5 million views, so he definitely knows about this. And he had the opportunity to reply again, but he's staying radio silent. So unfortunately, yeah, until he comes out with evidence to say, you know, both these girls are lying, we have to take these allegations at face value. But yeah, not showing evidence is definitely a bit of a red flag to me. And now, of course, I think a lot of these allegations that this Alice girl we're talking about are hard to prove. However, another one was apparently the biting allegations. Like, if Wilbur is allegedly biting you so hard that it's leaving bruises, how come there's no like photo evidence or something? And I remember seeing in my last video on this situation that apparently we don't need to show evidence for allegations. Like, I don't know who you people are who are saying this kind of ridiculous shit, but the amount of fake allegations that have come out over the last couple years have been terrible. Look at Dream. I mean, Dream's a big position of this. I mean, pretty much the entire internet thinks he's a creep, thinks he's an EDP 445, and then he comes out with this major video that pretty much completely proved his innocence, and now still like half the internet still thinks he's a creep. That's the damage that comes out when you believe allegations without evidence, and that's not how people should be moving forward. But yeah, as of right now, I do kind of believe these allegations. However, a big point was proven against Alice because, you know what, with all this attention she was getting, what did she decide to do? You know, she of course decided to thank people for letting her be heard, but the real red flag about her allegations getting so much attention is she went on to post this: "Waking up to so much support was a little overwhelming. Thank you for the kind messages. I feel so heard. I'm gonna take some time to be offline. If you'd like to support my creative efforts, feel free to check out my YouTube and Patreon." Can you imagine releasing major allegations of not only abuse but also SA against another creator, and then immediately going on to promote your YouTube and Patreon as soon as it starts getting attention? That's just like an immediate red flag for me. And honestly, as much as I think these allegations are very likely to be true, this really hurts the reputation of them, because, you know, when you come out with these allegations with very little evidence, and then as soon as they start getting attention, they're like, "Hey, yo, go subscribe to my YouTube," or "Hey, yo, go pay for my content on Patreon," it's definitely a red flag to me. And this was a terrible look for Alice. I have no idea what she was thinking, you know, promoting these socials on an allegation. It's a really bad look, although I still do believe, at least at this point, that these allegations may be correct. Of course, they are still allegations, and I would like to still see more proof from either of the girls, whether that be, you know, photo evidence or something of that lines. And I'm still waiting for a Wilbur response. So of course, if he decides to respond to these allegations, I'll make a future update video. But that's just my thoughts on this situation. You can let me know your thoughts down in the comments.